And hey everyone, welcome to the inaugural Boba Chat, a new special bonus podcast from us at Books and Boba, where Reera and I and maybe some guests in the future will get together and talk about some of the non-book things that we've been into. This is something new we're trying out for our new Patreon. In case you don't know, we just launched a Patreon for Books and Boba to help support our podcast and our future endeavors. We've been doing this podcast for about 6 years now. And, you know, we've had some sponsors here and there to help us with some of the costs. But Reera and I got together and decided, let's see if we can use a platform like Patreon to help us further grow the Books and Boba podcast. And when we thought about special perks that we can offer to our patrons, an idea for a bonus podcast came up where we might be able to engage more with our listeners and talk about things outside of the world of Asian American literature. Reera and I do have a wide range of interests, and we don't really get the chance to talk about that much on the air. So you're able to listen to this special podcast because we are releasing our inaugural episode on the main feed as, I guess, a teaser for the type of conversations that you can expect if you join our Patreon at the $5 level. We are offering 2 tiers. The regular Boba tier at $3 a month, which gives you access to our new exclusive members-only Discord server, where we hope to move some of our main conversations over from our Goodreads, which, you know, any reader will tell you Goodreads is not the most ideal place to hold discussion. And so we're hoping our Discord will be kind of the new bumping place to chat about books and boba. And at $5, we have our Honey Boba tier, which is our premium tier, which gives you access to both the Books and Boba Discord, as well as access to Boba Chat, which will be a monthly special bonus podcast exclusively for $5 backers. So yeah, we really appreciate everyone's feedback over the years and really hope that you support us in our new endeavors, because there's a lot of things that we want to do. And to be honest, running Books and Boba has required more and more of our time over the years as well. To give you a little sneak peek into our behind the scenes, we've been recording a lot of author interviews for the next few months. And, you know, we always love talking to Asian American authors, but that also means that we're like reading at least a book a week to prep for these conversations.
Yeah, and some of these books are, you know, not short. Some of them are like upwards to 400 pages. And even when we're not reading a book a week, we're also scheduling authors and looking at emails. And also we have book news, which is, you know, this is a lot of work and time. And, you know, like whenever someone asks me like, oh, like, what do you do? I just say I'm a podcaster because this is what I spend most of my time on. And I would love to, you know, like Marvin said, you know, justify the time that I am spending on this podcast, because the more time I spend on it, obviously I'm letting other writing projects, other freelance projects go. And yeah, I would like to work on my own thing.
Yeah. So, and we really do appreciate everyone who listens and gives feedback, and people who have, you know, stuck with us for years. I know some of you guys have been listening to us for a long time, and we don't want to just say, hey, you've enjoyed our stuff, give us money. Like we want to give something back as well, which is why we started the Patreon and why we're recording this podcast, in the hopes that you enjoy us enough that you want to hear an extra hour of us just shooting the shit like every month. And that's what this is. This is our Books and Boba Chat, because, you know, we've been doing Books and Boba for 6 years, pretty heavy on the books part of the title, not as much on the boba. And, you know, for our purposes, boba is kind of a catch-all to like Asian American like culture and pop culture. And that's what these, I guess we can call bonus episodes, will be about, is us kind of talking about what we are enjoying as Asian Americans outside of the books that we read, because we do have a life outside of books.
Do we though? Do we?
I do, at least. I don't know. Like,
no, I mean, we do. I mean, Marvin and I, like, you guys don't hear this because we edit it out, but we, you know, go on tangents. We talk about video games, talk about shows. We consume a lot of media, whether it's for work or just because we're procrastinating.
Yeah.
So, yeah, a lot of that conversation gets cut, and hopefully these feature episodes, we don't have to do that. We can talk and be geeking out over things that we enjoy.
All the things that we cut out for the purpose of, I guess, efficiency. This is where all the energy will go. If you enjoy what we're doing, if you enjoy what we're offering, please, it would mean the world to us to have your support. And, if we get enough, I guess, monthly revenue, it will open us up to do more things with Books and Boba as well, like things that have always been on our future to-do list, including things like a freelance budget for our blog, so we can post more fun articles, listicles, and reviews from the community, as well as helping us expand our marketing budget. Something that we've never really done for our podcast is actually pay for marketing. It's all been organic. And, part of a podcast lifeblood is to reach new people. And there are all these marketing tools and things that I'd love to play with, but we just don't have the budget. So,
yeah, and I also, like, in the future would like to maybe host workshops for people who, want to get into podcasting or, want to start book clubs of their own. These are just things that we have talked about between Marvin and I over Boba. So, we have a lot of ideas for how we want to grow, and this is the first step.
Yeah. So if you would like to join us as part of our inaugural class of Patreon, I guess, patrons, you can check out our Patreon at patreon.com/booksandboba and support us on any of the tiers that you feel comfortable in supporting. But with that, I guess let's get started. So like I mentioned, Boba Chat will be our monthly bonus non-book related chat, although I'm sure we'll still probably talk about books here as well. But the idea is to have this show be a free-flowing conversation with Reera, myself, and maybe we'll even bring on some former guests, authors, book people, to just have, random non-book conversations with. But this episode is just me and Reera. It's our first inaugural episode. So I guess to start off, Reera, what have you been into lately?
Yeah, yesterday I went to go see Dungeons and Dragons: Honor Among Thieves. I've been wanting to watch this movie ever since I saw the chubby dragon in the trailer. And I was like, oh my God, this is my thing, because I love fantasy and, especially when it's mixed in with comedy. Like Princess Bride is like one of my favorite films of all time. And it kind of has that same level of humor. But yeah, I really enjoyed it. And, there were some surprising performances, like Reggae John Page, who plays Simon in Bridgerton. He plays a paladin who is just like a straight man who has no humor, who is way too holy and into himself, super heroic. And I love what he's doing. And everybody's just so hilarious. And I thought it was a really good cast. And I've only played Dungeons and Dragons twice in my life, but I did recognize some of the canon stuff. Like Neverwinter is actually a place. I think Baldur's Gate is also a real place. The Underdark. So I'm sure people who do play Dungeons and Dragons will have some Easter eggs here and there.
I also watched the film last week. I really liked it a lot. We actually talk about that in Good Pop this week. But I recognize some of the names because Baldur's Gate is now also a very popular series of computer CRPGs, which the third one I think is coming out soon. And I did play some D&D back in middle school. So I do recognize, I think this takes place in the Forgotten Realms expansion world.
It's the most popular
which
campaign.
Is kind of their it's typically I think more of a grimdark setting, which is why it was really cool to see this as because the film it's a heist film.
It's a series of heists. Okay, so you need to go into this film just, just go with the ride because there's just so much happening and it's just like heist after heist after heist. If you're going for like an overall like narrative structure, I feel like you'll kind of be overwhelmed. So yeah, it really does play with like the D&D structure because like it's just like things happen and you just kind of
Yeah, it's like a campaign and it's a bunch of smaller quests leading up to like a giant showdown to like end the quest line. And there is a lot of adventure in Dungeons and Dragons, which I really enjoyed. I think, I think I heard and I think I just forgot about the last time they tried to make Dungeons and Dragons into a film series. It was like 2004, starring like Thora Birch and Jeremy Irons, and they totally played it straight. Like they made it into like a actual like grim, dark fantasy world, and it just didn't work, right?
Because, yeah, it doesn't have that playfulness, Like I feel like Dungeons and Dragons is supposed to be, you're there for a good time, and I heard something recently that like surprised me. When we were in lockdown, a lot of people got into Dungeons and Dragons, like watching other people play it on YouTube. I know there are some voice actors who, have like weekly Dungeons and Dragons sessions, and they like use their talent to voice voice their characters, and it's like more epic. But yeah, like a lot of young kids, they got into Dungeons and Dragons during COVID, and this was like a way for them to, get together with their friends for hours. Because Dungeons and Dragons, it is a game that lasts for hours. And you can only play Among Us so many times until you get bored.
That's true. Jackbox doesn't really have the legs past like the first few sessions.
Yeah. What kind of characters would you play? Like what would
I was always
be
the
your
dungeon
character
master.
type?
I was the only person in my group of friends who had the patience to read through the source books, and so I did a lot of world building, a lot of adventure planning. It was really a lot.
You were a producer even back then.
I was a middle schooler, so like it wasn't very like I was using a lot of the ready-made scenarios. And I remember back then, KB Toy Stores, which is remember Toy Stores? Remember when Toy Stores used to exist at malls? We could go in and buy toys.
There's a Toys R Us that's opening nearby.
Really?
And I was like, wait, what? Like, I thought they went out of business. Like, how is this
I thought
possible?
so too, but there's a Toys R Us. I don't think it's a pop-up, but it's like a section at the Macy's on Lake in Pasadena.
Yeah. That's the one I'm talking about.
So I guess Macy's bought.
Now I have
Toys R Us,
doxed myself. People know where now people know where I live. I don't really care, but yeah.
These are just Pasadena big, so it doesn't really matter. But yeah, I remember my first set was in Advanced Dungeons and Dragons, kind of like starter pack, where it's kind of they give you pre-made characters. There's like a CD that you can play along that like narrates the adventure. And then from there, I started buying like other sets to expand our campaign. But the thing is, KB Toy Stores back then had all these sets on sale, but all for like Dungeons and Dragons. So like the first edition. So even back then I had to like do what I do now for producing, which is mainly fitting things together that don't necessarily go together and hoping they work. Like, okay, I have all these disparate pieces that I want to use. They don't necessarily connect to each other perfectly, but if I tweak something here and there, I can make it all work. I can create something, if not beautiful, at least charming in its jankiness, right?
Yeah, and Dungeons and Dragons is kind of like improv, I would say.
It is. It's improv with rules.
Like, it's improv with rules, and like for me, like I really couldn't get into it because I'm pretty bad at improv, and I take a lot of time just coming up with things, and that's just not ideal for Dungeons and Dragons when you need to like come up with scenarios like right then and there, and you just have to like go with the flow. And also, like, you have to meet very regularly with your
the hardest
with your ragtag group of protagonists.
As an adult, like I've moved on from Dungeons and Dragons because for me, what I love about tabletop RPGs is kind of the improv part of it. I'm not as like, I don't have time to pour through rule books. And something that you'll find is Dungeons and Dragons, the majority of the rules are all about combat. So a lot of adventures is about fighting things. And since I've moved on from there, I had this problem where I've spent the pandemic also watching people play games. So I have accumulated actually a ton of board games and RPG source books that I have never used practically because I don't have people who can commit to like regular gaming sessions. And my wife is not a gamer. She is not a board game person. So, but I've been accumulating books using other systems like Powered by the Apocalypse, like Dungeon World, Blaze in the Dark, which are more, I guess, narrative focused systems, which I really enjoy and really like. And I'm itching to I've been in the back of my head, I've been wanting to do like an actual play podcast for the longest time. But again, it requires having people who can meet regularly for us to record. And that's hard because everyone who was on my list to be a part of that are having babies for some reason. Like they're all having children in the next few months, and that's not conducive to playing games.
Yeah, not at all. Children do not care about scheduling. But yeah, like I think the last two times I've played, I think I was a sorcerer and a ranger, which makes sense because I'm all about characters who have like range attacks. Like when I play video games, it's always an archer, it's always a mage because I'm so bad at like hand-eye coordination in action video games. I'm like, okay, what's an attack that I can do from far away? And also just like in fantasy lore, I like rangers and mages more. I just find them more interesting than a barbarian or a druid. So, yeah. And I don't really know what my character alignment is with like, you know, chaotic good, like lawful neutral. Like I remember I took a couple of like quizzes to find out like what my personality type would be, but I don't know. I feel like I'm more in the chaotic good area, but my partner Dan has told me that I like to follow rules quite a bit.
Yeah, I see you as more lawful than anything.
Yeah. But I'm all about like doing crimes in order to get justice. So I don't know.
Maybe that is more the thing with the D&D alignment system. It's kind of rigid, which is also a reason why I like some of these other systems where it's not less about like what your alignment is more about what your drives are and thinking about what drives a person to is it revenge, is it greed, is it survival, is it like you want something. And I think, you know, like I said, there's a lot of really cool ways to homebrew a campaign, and that's kind of the beauty of being like the dungeon master or the game master or whoever the narrator is. You can kind of not impose your will, but like switch things up behind the scenes. And like the best dungeon masters are really great at going with the flow too. Like, and I think that's something that really comes out in the film Dungeons and Dragons, Honor Among Thieves, is you can tell if this was a tabletop game, this is a dungeon master who has to deal with a lot, right? Because obviously Chris Pine's character is the wild card player who just loves to try crazy shit and somehow always rolls a 20 because it always works out.
I would say Chris Pine is like a dungeon master because he's the one who comes up with all the plans and like the reasons why they're going on these quests. But he's like, you know, he's like the hero character who, you know, doesn't really know what he's doing at the same time. Well, I mean, it's interesting. I mean,
when you're playing the game, there's always that one guy who says, well, why don't we just fly using the Birdman? Right? Like, and then you say, okay, roll for it. And then you roll 20. And it's like, I guess you escape with the Birdman.
Yeah. And, like there's like a funny line in the movie where they're just like just magic it away or just figure it out with magic. And Justice Smith's character, who is this like very low self-esteemed sorcerer, he's just like, you can't magic everything, every problem. And I was like, that that's just Dungeons and Dragons, where people are just trying to fix things, trying to get their way with like the easiest way possible. But obviously, you have to roll a 20 in order to get that. But that was my topic. What about you, Marvin? What have you been enjoying lately?
You know, it's been tough these past few weeks. I'm actually on like a bunch of deadlines. Right now, I'm working on a few podcast projects for clients. And somehow everything's coming due this week, which, you know, is just something that happens when you work in the creative field. It's like, sometimes there's a perfect storm and everything just has to happen this week. But I have been sneaking in some TV here and there. So I've been watching a lot of Top Chef and like catching up on, I've been a fan since I want to say season 4, which came out like, I want to say 2008, 2009, like a long time ago. It's actually one of the few reality TV shows that I follow week to week.
What about it do you like about
it's
it?
It's just it's one of the few American reality competitions that is just pure like competency porn, I think is what they call it. It's just people at the top of their game doing what they do best. And that to me is like just great programming, right? Because I feel like a lot of American reality competition, it's more for the drama, right? They try to mine for drama. They try to mine for like showcase like humiliation, right? Like such as like Hell's Kitchen, right? Like the Gordon Ramsay show, which is the draw isn't watching people cook good. The draw is watching Gordon Ramsay yell at people, right? And that just was never something that I was into. So, and I think Top Chef knows what they're doing because their challenges have been less and less gimmicky. Although they do the occasional gimmick. I think one of the challenges this season has been like a Ritz cracker challenge, which, you know, these reality shows also live and die on their product placements. But I love shows that have that kind of vibe. I think that's also why I really like Great British Bake Off. Although the last few seasons have been more gimmicky and less pleasant.
Have you watched the professionals?
I tried. It's so boring though.
I don't know. I think it's very interesting because their cakes and their treats are always like so intricate, and I'm like, how are they making that? How is that standing? It's very interesting to me as someone who you know, likes to see how things work.
I think for me, for like British Bake Off Professionals Edition, it's missing something. I think there's a mismatch between like the pleasant vibes of the Bake Off show and like the cutthroatness of the actual like contestants. Like if you're gonna have like professional bakers and people who run professional kitchens in a competition with each other, I don't think the vibes of like a Bake Off work, because the Bake Off vibes are all about like amateurs kind of doing their best, right? And I don't know, there's just some mismatch there for me that I kind of bounced off. Like I also bounced off a lot of like Netflix has been putting a lot of cooking shows, right? Like this one's about chocolate, this one's about snacks, and for some reason, like I just can't get into them as much. And I don't know what the problem is. On paper, I should be totally into them, but it's hard for me to. There's just some magic secret sauce that like Top Chef and regular Bake Off has. And I'm really excited for this next season of Bake Off because they've replaced the one host that has been kind of weird. Matt Lucas.
Oh.
That has been kind of, you know, whenever he's on screen during one of the like, let's say quote unquote ethnic challenges, I'm just bracing myself for like, is he gonna do something racist?
I mean, to be fair, it's the Great British Bake Off, so there's gonna be some colonial undertones there.
Yeah, but it's also 2023. And your whole vibe is supposed to be pleasant. Like, let's at least be self-aware that you represent a country that used to be the poster child for colonialism, right?
Yeah.
I mean, what kind of reality shows do you usually like, Reera?
I'm not a reality show person, but I really liked Physical 100, even though
that was a good one.
That
yeah.
I'm not into like athletics or just like bodybuilding or like anything that requires like a huge amount of muscle. So I was kind of turned off by it until Marvin actually said it had like a very like Great British Bake Off vibe where everybody is like very much cheering on each other. And I was like, okay, I'll give it a try. And the the contestants are just like so competent, and also just, there's a sportsmanship to it that really reminds me of animes. So I really like that. I also what is it? I forgot the show's name, but there was like a special effects makeup competition show. And yeah, like every week the makeup artists, they get these crazy prompts where I remember there was like one episode where they had to make their own Star Wars character. Like they had to fit into the canteen scene. So I was like, oh, that's really cool. Like seeing all the prosthetics and like how the makeup comes together. That's really cool. So I don't really know like what type of reality show person I am, because it just kind of like depends on the people who are competing.
Yeah.
Yeah,
I think
I tried to watch Love is Blind and I just could not get into it.
Yeah, I haven't been. I tried watching FY Island on HBO Max, and while fun, it just was not pleasant for me. I tried watching actually the NBC show The Courtship, which is like their attempt at making like The Bachelorette, but in Regency England, using like Regency etiquette themed challenges. And it didn't work because I think they just fundamentally did not understand the assignment. Like it was basically The Bachelorette with Regency vibes, but not really Regency like rules, right? And it just, yeah, I was really disappointed because I have recently in the last few years been, I guess, Regency pilled because of books we've read from this book club, and things that I've watched for some of my other podcasts, and just being in the general vicinity of people who love Regency era romances. And so I was excited to see what they would do with that challenge, with that show, and it just didn't live up to it. And I was very like, who am I to become like this like snob about doing it correctly, right?
I mean, that's the thing. You and I are very much about like the rules and how things work in like a setting. So, which is why like both of us are big fans of fantasy, because you have like a magic system and you're like really into like how things work. So obviously when people don't understand the assignment, it's very, very frustrating.
Yeah. Yeah, and like Top Chef has been a show that has consistently like kept my interest, and also may or may not have been a major contributing factor to me becoming what other people might consider a foodie, because
yeah, you do go to a lot of places and eat like fancy stuff. I see it on your Instagram all the time, and I'm like, I would like to visit those places, but a lot of them are like pretty far away from me, so I'm like, or like the wait is too long, or like it's too crowded, and I just like do not have the patience.
Yeah, I mean, I may or may not have made reservations at a restaurant 6 months in advance at one point in my life and planned a whole trip around it.
That's nuts.
But yeah, I think whatever they're doing there, it's obviously worked on me. And I don't know, I think the fact that I'm still really into the show, like 16 seasons on, is like a testament to just the formula. And I don't know what it is about it. Like the hardest thing for a show is to maintain quality year after year. A lot of shows don't, especially reality shows, right? Like they kind of, it's really easy to fall in laurels and just do the same thing over and over again. And I don't know, something about Top Chef, just it's been the show, the one show that I have. It's probably the longest running show that I've followed, because I don't watch Grey's Anatomy. So this is my Grey's Anatomy, the show that just keeps going and going and going.
Actually, now that I think about it, I do watch like Korean reality shows and like variety shows. So, but I guess variety shows are a different category from reality shows, because you're not like following the same people.
Maybe this is a conversation for.
I guess Terrace House is considered a reality show. That
is, and Terrace House also gives Korean reality show vibes, right? Because it has the peanut gallery, which like this is probably a conversation for another boba talk, but I like what my mother-in-law watches a lot of Korean programming, and there is like this formula, right, which is like, let's do a docu-series about these celebrities going camping, whatever, and have these other comedians comment on it. And that is a show that's been replicated like all over the place.
Yeah, yeah. And also, like Masked Singer, that was a Korean show, and then America took it and went wild with
Yeah.
it. So yeah, Korean variety shows and reality shows, they do come up with some wild
Yeah.
premises.
Well, a conversation for another time. I'd love to get like one of the
Yeah.
Kimchings on and just talk about that. I'd love to hear their thoughts about it. And that's another thing that we're planning to do with Boba Chat is, again, like bringing in former guests, other authors, book people to talk about, whatever. So moving on, something else that we want to incorporate into this podcast is a Q&A segment where we answer questions from the community, specifically from you, our dear patrons, or people who will become patrons of the Books and Boba Patreon. Since this is our first Boba Chat episode, we don't have any questions from our community, so I prepared some just basic questions for us to discuss, sort of like an icebreaker for the segments. So, Reera, you ready for some Q&A?
Yeah, let me at it.
All right. So, this is something that I feel like could have been a regular segment in our podcast, but I don't know if you're like me, a creature of habit, but it would have been just the same answer every week. So let's just do it here. What is your current go-to boba joint and order?
Yeah, I don't really have like a regular boba place that I go to. It's usually like whichever one is closest to me, depending on where I am. I do like Sunright. I do like Twinkle. There's like a couple of like smaller boba shops where I live. There's Bearology. There's Boba Cha. So there's like a lot of places, but I don't really have like a go-to place because my orders are usually super boring and doesn't really require a lot of like extra special ingredients. So I've mentioned this on our show before, but when I get my boba, I don't actually get the boba balls in my drink. I go for the tea. So my usual order is just like black sugar milk tea, or if they have hojicha, I'm like, yeah, okay, let's get the hojicha milk tea. So I go for very like basic earthy teas, and I don't like them overly sweet either. And a lot of these boba places, like they specialize in like mixed drinks that require a lot of like syrups or artificial flavors, and I'm like, I'm not really about
we're
that,
not drinking for the
so.
gram, right?
Yeah, I mean, like all of my drinks are like brown or green, so they're not very pretty. But I do go to like K-pop cup sleeve events. So I go to a lot of like BTS and TXT cup sleeves, and that requires me to go to random boba shops where you have fans who are like selling merchandise that they've made. And there's like really cool photo booths where you take photos with props. Sometimes they have cutouts of like the K-pop stars. Sometimes they have themes around them. So yeah, like I said, I don't have a regular boba joint. I go wherever, whichever one is closest to me, or if there's a cool event that's happening. Yeah. What about you, Marvin?
Yeah, I mean, my current go-to place is Sunright, which is and I discovered this recently, an Irvine-based milk tea boba company that's been opening stores all over Southern California. They're kind of my go-to place because they have the most locations. I like to get there. I just recently discovered they have a new, I don't know if it's promotional or if it's just a new item, but aged milk tea, which is using kind of more aged tea leaves, which has a stronger tea flavor. So, okay, so for health reasons, I tend to get my milk tea unsweetened. So I don't add any sugar to it. So for me these days, milk tea, the tea aspect of it is very important because that's where I get my flavor, aside from the milk. And like Reera, I also have stopped putting boba balls in my drinks. I think I stopped doing that in college or right after college. I think at some point, and I understand you're either a boba person or you're a tea person. And for me, I discovered I'm definitely more of a tea person. Like I like to drink and taste the tea. I enjoy that. The boba balls just kind of get in the way, although they are fun. But if you want to ask me what my favorite current drink is, it's actually the black sesame milk tea at Soma. And Soma is a tea shop that is originally from Taiwan. They have, I think, 2 or 3 locations now in Orange County. This is a place that I discovered randomly while walking the back streets of the shopping district in Taipei. They have a really cool vibe and they have really good tea. Like they specialize in like high mountain oolong teas, and they have a really great black sesame milk tea. And just randomly one day I was driving my wife, then girlfriend, to get her eyebrows done in this random plaza in Cerritos. And we noticed the Soma logo on a building. We're like, that can't be it. And turned out, yeah, they had brought their store over to the States, and we were so excited. The only reason we don't go there more often is because we don't live near Cerritos. It's kind of far away. So it's become like kind of a special occasion drink for us because one of our favorite shabu places is really close to that Soma shop. So yeah, Soma is it's a store that doesn't get as much publicity as, say, like the Bopo Mofo that's right across the street from them. But personally, I think their tea is a lot better. If
You're saying that when a friend is the owner of Boba.
Yeah.
How often do you get boba?
These days, at least once a week. I don't go out as much as I used to because I work from home. But when I do go out, I tend to find a reason to stop by a Sunright. We can put in a mobile order and pick it up really quickly. So at least once a week, on average, 2 to 3 times a week.
Yeah, I'm the same too. It's usually once a week, but it can increase depending on if I'm out far enough and there are like really nice boba shops around me.
All right.
Yeah.
Our next question: what is your earliest boba memory? Like how do you remember when you first became aware of boba milk tea?
Kind of. So, our friend Quincy, he hosts a podcast called Asian Americana, and he has a boba episode, and I'm in it. So I talk about like my first experience with discovering boba. So the first time I've had boba was this shop near my church actually sold boba, and we didn't really know what it was. It was run by like a grandma and like her spouse. So I remember like a friend got like taro milk tea, and I was like, okay, like let me try. And I was like, oh, it tastes like Oreos. I like this. So it just became like a regular thing for us because it was walking distance, and it was walking distance from church, kind of. I mean, it was a far walk, but when you don't have a car, when you're like a teen, it's like doable. And it was like right by a high school as well. So it became like a very easy place to just, pick up your drinks and just like chill out. So that's my first memory. I'm Korean, so like I like hadn't really heard about bubble tea or boba tea or pearl tea. I didn't really know its origins. I was just like, what is this?
Yeah, I think for me, it was before like lollicups and quickly started opening. So it was probably like 1997, 98. I remember my first experience of it wasn't actually in Taiwan. I used to go to Taiwan every summer to visit family, but the drinks we would get there would usually be the winter melon tea. We didn't really get a lot of milk tea. But I remember my mom ordering it for me at this food court in, I want to say either Monterey Park or Arcadia in the San Gabriel Valley, and being kind of weirded out by the tapioca balls. And then high school, they started opening boba shops all over the city. So Lollicup, Quickly, Tapioca Express. And it like triggered memories of like drinking that with my mom. And I was like, okay, like I know what this is. Let's get it. And this was back when like Quickly, there was a Quickly on the way home from school, because I used to walk home from school every day, that would sell regular boba milk tea for 98 cents. And so that's like $1, like with tax, that's like $1.07. So I would always keep like 7 cents in my pocket to buy that milk tea on the way home. But yeah, it just kind of just organically became a part of teen life in the SGV. Like my friends and I would spend hours in like boba shops playing cards. Our go-to game was as many names. We called it 13, but I think the more common name is Big Two. I don't know if you ever played this card game. You play with a deck of cards. There's both a Chinese version and a Vietnamese version that have different rules. But yeah, we would play that game, and we would order either the popcorn chicken or French fries from these boba shops at like the highest heat level, so like extreme spicy. And we would play cards, and whoever loses would have to eat from the super spicy food.
Wow, that really does sound like a teen pastime.
Yeah, those are my earliest memories of boba. And like we said, my tastes have changed over the years, veered towards less sweets. I veer towards less boba or no boba. I still do like grass jelly though as a topping. It's not as carby. Still maybe sweet at some points, but it's also very like easier to drink, I guess, because you don't need to chew.
Yeah, I mean, you're from the SGV, so obviously you had way more choices growing up than me. The boba shop that I talked about, it was like the only one for like a number of years. I don't think it was until like maybe college, like when I would like come back home for breaks, that they opened up more shops. And in the East Coast, surprisingly there weren't that many boba shops. There was, again, just like one shop that I would go to regularly while I was in college in Manhattan. And when I visited my old campus like a number of years ago, I was just so surprised to see so many boba shops open. I was like, whoa, there's some like chains that I like. I was just like, there's a Gongcha here?
Yeah,
what?
and I wonder how much of that is just like, again, like the history of Asian America is the history of like migration patterns. And like, I think back in like the 90s, early 2000s, I don't know how many Taiwanese immigrants were in the East Coast. I know like East Coast, like New York Asians are definitely more like Hong Kong, Fukien,
Mainlanders, yeah.
Maybe that has something to do with it, because I imagine the influx of like Taiwanese culture probably came in the form of college students from the West Coast coming into like NYU, Columbia, like those schools, and like sticking around and bringing, because as always, culture follows culture, right? So if you have more Taiwanese people or people aware of Taiwanese culture settling in a certain place, eventually the culture will follow, because we all miss home, right? Like recently in my hometown, there's been a large influx of Korean restaurants. So I'm like, there must be more Koreans in the area, because I remember in high school, there were literally like maybe 3 Koreans in our entire school.
Yeah. And same thing with like Korean restaurants. Like I remember when I was in college, like if I wanted to eat Korean food, I had to go to K-Town in New York. But when I went to visit like not so long ago, I was like, wow, there are some like Korean fast food places around campus that did not exist before. Asian food overall, like it was something that you kind of had to like go look for, but now it's just so accessible. And I'm like, you kids are so lucky. Like I had to really hunt down for affordable Asian food, and it wasn't even like the price point was also like always an issue, because you can get like good Asian food in New York if you're willing to pay, but you can't really get that like home cooked Asian food quality for like a good price.
Yeah, I mean that's just kind of what living in New York is like, right? New York's a great restaurant city.
Another reason why the West Coast is better than the East Coast, in my opinion, as someone who has lived in both coasts for a long time, and anywhere is better than the South. I will say, in terms of like Asian food. Although it's been a while since I've been back to Georgia, and there is a great deal more diversity there.
I mean,
now.
I know Atlanta has kind of like become a big city for like Korean, not immigrants.
Oh yeah, it's the
like
fourth largest city.
I know a lot of Korean families from California moving to Atlanta, the suburbs of Atlanta, because their friends have gone there as well.
Yeah, it's really funny because my family, when we moved to Georgia, it was because of my dad's work, and then like we've met like a lot of East Coast Korean families that like we knew back in the day, and they like moved to Georgia too. So we're like, whoa, all the East Coast Koreans are moving to the South because of housing is more affordable and you get more space. So yeah,
and like we said, culture brings culture. Now you have H Marts and sundubu places all over.
Yeah, now you don't have to explain what sundubu is to your non-Korean friends. They know immediately what you're talking about.
Yeah, I mean, again, those are topics that we can dive into more in a future Boba Chat episode, because there's just so much we can talk about in terms of just Asian American culture, because like both Reera and I have been around. Me longer than Reera, but we've seen our community grow, and we've seen, especially like Korean culture has like the awareness of like Korean food and culture has like grown exponentially over the last decade. And but we'll save that for next time. I think that'll do it for our inaugural Books and Boba Chat. If you enjoyed our chat and want to hear more, going forward, this will be a bonus feature available to Honey Boba members, our $5 tier of our Patreon. So if you want to hear our next episode, please join our Patreon, become a member, and support Books and Boba and our future endeavors. But before we go, since it is still the month of April, we'd be remiss not to remind you what we are reading this month for Book Club. Reera, can you remind us what our book club pick is?
Yeah, we are reading Vera Wong's Unsolicited Advice for Murderers by Jesse Q. Sutanto.
Yeah, always love a good murder mystery, and always love a good story about aunties. So excited to chat about this with you all at the end of the month. That will be in our regular Books and Boba fee, so you don't necessarily have to be a Patreon member to listen to that, but we do appreciate you if you join. But with that, thank you so much for listening to our inaugural Boba Chat episode, and we'll see you next time on Books and Boba. Bye, everybody.
Bye, everyone.